What's good, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Vancity Beats, Eats, and
More.
More. Ah,
More
yeah,
tea.
more.
More tea.
Yes.
That's some good.
If you're
oolong.
just tuning in with us and this is your first time, I am the hostess with the mostest. My name is Kazi. This is a jazzy production, a show that is produced and sponsored by STORYHIVE, shout outs. And today's show, every show we talk about and talk with the multifaceted, super talented, creative scene of Vancity. And on today's show, we have a special guest. They're always special, but this one's special in my heart. He goes by the name of Adrian Sinclair. Very multi-talented, beautiful human being who has a lot of roles that he's played in his lifetime. I was going to list them all out.
Okay, fun.
As a multi-hyphenate creative based out of so-called Vancouver, BC, he has been in this lifetime a promoter, event planner, fundraiser, illustrator, freestyle rapper, Zinester, author, touring musician. Can I get a clap for all of these? Oddball performer, slam poet, university instructor, corporate rave designer, I love that one, grant writer, surfer, sauna bus driver, erotic dancer, Gong Fu tea student, phenomenologist, and a dreamer. That's a heavy list, and I feel like it's not even complete.
Well, when you work in the arts, especially, it's all about trying to find your way.
Yeah.
And I think I read this text a long time ago about druids.
Okay. Druids?
Druids, yeah.
As in like
sorry, yeah.
No, you go on.
Yeah, like the sort of Gaelic, like Northern Scot, Northern Irish kind of like pre-Christian contact, like pre-colonization. It would take 20 years for you to do all your study to be a druid, to be like a leader of your community.
Wow.
So from roughly 20 or after coming of age to 40, which I'm 42 now.
Yeah.
It takes about 20 years to be like, I'm a druid now. And even then you have to be acclaimed by your community has to say you're at it. You can't be like, I'm a master. You have to be given that by the community.
Yeah.
You have to learn the languages, you have to learn the science, you have to learn the ritual, you have to learn the territory, you gotta learn the craft. And so that's why that list is so long, because I was like, okay, I cannot specialize. So I intentionally, was like, okay, I'm not a druid.
Yes.
But that path looked really interesting to me. So I intentionally just tried to do as many different things as I could. And it all eventually turns into a thing. Because you don't do it, but your community shapes all your edges, right? And so whatever you've been doing, your community will shape your edges and say, this is what you are. And so you kind of get this second birth when you're in your, whatever, I'm 42, so I'm feeling like I'm being guided now. I can do all these different things. And it was like, we need you to do this thing. And we're like, okay.
We're already getting into it with the one and only Professor Prawns.
Yeah, that's why people call me that. Like, okay, thanks explaining a lot.
Oh my gosh, okay.
Give this guy a mic.
Oh my god. To fill in more context, and especially why this person is sitting here with me today, many of you, especially if you're coming in and watching this from the Vancity creative scene, probably know Adrian from so many different things, whether it's his pursuits with transformation projects, or him as Professor Prawns and Freestyle Focus Group. I know him through Vancouver Mural Festival as one of the co-founders. Oh,
it's tea break.
Refill.
Okay, back on.
Importante, we keep it going.
Yeah, always.
And yeah, the first time I ever met you was back in 2016. I got invited through Armando.
Yeah, right.
Because you asked him to DJ
a
party that was going on at the former HQ back then.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is this space? There's sick murals. And then I learned about the festival that y'all do, which at that point in time had only been year 1, going into year 2.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, what? Your festival happens the second weekend of August, which is, the weekend before the festival I was very involved with, which is Vancouver Street Dance Festival.
Respect.
And
that's one of the coolest festivals.
Yes, hands down.
It's one of the coolest.
And And so, yeah, we connected over the fact that it was like, wait, how do you not know about our festival? We didn't know about yours, you know, especially within that culture of street dance, club dance. It's so connected to hip hop, street art, graffiti, etc. I'm like, what's going on here? Like, we need to collab or something. And then, yeah, we did. And I wanted to ask you about this. Do you remember the name of the event that we did? It was like Mash something.
Oh, Art Smash.
No, it wasn't Art Smash. It was like Mash It Up or Mash something.
Oh, you mean at the headquarters?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, the fundraiser.
That was the first ever event we did where I was like, can we throw a battle here? Because we don't have a lot of spaces in the street dance community where we can do battles and events. So you're like, yeah, let's do it. So we had table tutors come in. They did a DJ battle. It was like the the sound systems were across the room from each other. And then we did a dance battle. And then you brought in... was it Jay Nasty or one of the graffiti writers, and he did a painting.
Yeah, who was it?
And then we had an open community canvas. It was just such a sick
It was
party.
wild. There was paint everywhere.
Yeah.
There's spray. There was dancing.
And pretty much from that point forward, you know, you invited me to come and produce and curate 4 elements of hip hop that became part of the street party for like 3 years.
Yeah, it was a staple.
Yeah. So long story short, it goes deep. From having known you and having had your support, especially for me personally as, you know, a community curator and event organizer on the come up, learning things as I go. And part of me learning things as I go is like asking questions to the people around me. And you were one of those people. You were always willing to like help come up with a creative solution to a thing. You're like, you guys are needing to fundraise for the festival? Well, let's host it. And we'll give you money and support and give you the space and the platform to do it and do it how you do it.
Yeah, that was a really neat combo because we both had the same need. Like we wanted to create programming and create those connections.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And bring art and culture and especially dance to the streets.
Yeah.
You know?
So cool. It's cool just to like just remember and think about that for a while with you right now. Like it's really cool just to reflect on that.
Yeah.
Because things move so fast, you always move on to the next thing, and it's like this is a cool show because you can actually just like, how does everything connect to each other? How are we all connected? And I think that's something that we need a lot right now. Is like a moment to, in the speed of hustle and creation and motion, how can we also have that moment of like, let's sit and think about things and like see how it all, because it's pretty cool practice. This is a cool show. This is cool to be here.
We're not even done yet.
This is cool to be here.
Think of it.
I'm having a great time.
Aww. Yeah, I mean, I bring all of that up because
Super cool.
A, I'm just like now in storyline going down memory lane. But B, it's like, you know, I used your name so many times in support of writing like letters of support for grant applications and things like that. That like, there's so much that you have done in your past to get you to this point. And I want to create the space here on the show to have a conversation, to know those things more deeply about you, you know. So if we can, I'd love to start with, in order for us to understand who sits in front of us today, what do people need to know? What do we need to know about who you were as young Adrian?
Oh, okay,
you know,
great.
The environments and people that shaped you.
Like kind of like what, kind of like I'm here, and then like what are the things that led to me being here, or like where I'm at, kind of thing.
Yeah, but more so like who are you as a young Adrian?
Oh, young Adrian, yeah.
What do we need to understand about young Adrian to know who sits in front of us today?
Okay, cool. Good question. Let me think about it. Well, you know, there's like that young period, which is, like you said, the young Adrian period, which is, I guess, kind of like elementary, high school, university kind of period. That was like a lot of moving around the country. So every couple of years, up until I was 15, every 2 or 3 years we'd move for different reasons.
Yeah, geographically where?
Yeah, like so born in Winnipeg, and then Toronto, and then Abbotsford, then back to Toronto, then back to Abbotsford, and before I was 15. So, and then within Toronto moving a bunch, and then Abbotsford as well. And that was all based on, you know, like parents moving, you gotta move with them, because, you know, you're not over 18, so you gotta go with that. And what was really interesting was that moving between Toronto and Abbotsford was very challenging, I guess you could say. But what ended up happening was I would be exposed to so much culture from around the world, and so much of like music, food, arts, culture, everything, religion. Yeah. And then I'd move to Abbotsford, and then there would be lots of religion, but those other pieces was very much absent.
Yeah, it's monoculture.
Very monoculture. Actually, it was it's almost like a bicultural. So there would be so my mom is from a Mennonite background, very rural agricultural, and Abbotsford, that's where she grew up, close to there. And then there's also a South Asian community there as well, a very strong Punjabi culture there. So, and it was a very different environment compared to Toronto, which is just hundreds of backgrounds, right, all in one place. And there's no utopian style, but basically by me being exposed to both and seeing what both sides brought, I ended up having a very, very well-rounded and challenging upbringing that allowed me to, my plan was once I get my own place and I live on my own, I'm going to help make things happen in a cultural way. Because living, especially in Abbotsford, it was you had to make your own fun. You had to make your own community. So we would turn houses into venues. Yeah. We would renovate, not with permission, renovate whole basements of all these spots and create punk rock venues and dance venues and there was 5 different venues we made that were not on the map, out of basements. And then we would get touring bands from Vancouver to play. We had Death from Above 1979, or 1979, 1981, whatever, 1979. They were playing at our spot. We got Hot Hot Heat to play at our spot. We got all these bands that were Vancouver bands to play in Abbotsford basements. Because we were it's going to be great. Lots of people are going to come. This is the spot you want to go. And then we started getting touring bands from the States to play.
Wow.
And we're you just have to create relationships and you just create a space. And then once you came to Vancouver, I realized that actually Vancouver is a lot more like Abbotsford than Toronto because there just wasn't spaces for cool stuff to happen. So I think a lot of who I am and what I've learned is that every time I move to a new place, you have to find out what's going on. You have to build trust. You have to create an understanding, and then you work together with other people, and you can never do it yourself. So I've always been I like to build a team. I like to find out the superheroes, what each person's power is, and be you have this power, you have this power, and you have this power. Let's put them all together. It's like Voltron. Everyone's together as one unit, and then as pieces need support, you run over and you help them get back into the thing and push it forward. So I think that's a quick synopsis of why I do what I do is and then seeing by living in those two places, seeing how much inequality and oppression happens when there isn't a diversity of voices that are supported. So if you have a monoculture, it's the most oppressive culture. It's like any kind of you need a biodiversity, you need cultural diversity, and so it all goes together into one thing. Yeah.
Wow, you just explaining all of that made me see exactly how I fit into that space. Where you saw the thing and then put me in the team.
Yeah.
And was you handle this one aspect of the street party and just do it.
Well, you showed up with such a clear vision of what you wanted to achieve, so you're really easy to work with because you know exactly what you want in life. It's you let people know what you want to happen, and then you're let's go. And then I feel that's something you bring to collaborations is your very strong vision, you're very clear what you want to achieve, and you're dedicated, you're a committed person, So that's cool. So I respond to that. Yeah, but it's real though. You know it though. Yeah. I'm not the first person that told you that.
Yeah, I know, but you have a way with words, man.
Well,
and the way
my dad's a pastor, so that might. So there's some more info for y'all out there.
There's some more info. The secret's all today on the show.
He knows homiletics, so.
What is that?
Oh, it's the art of creating sermons.
Oh.
Yeah, dropping some knowledge.
Interesting.
Yeah, but homiletics is interesting. It's there's inductive, deductive sermons. Anyways.
So for anyone who doesn't know, do you mind to spit the mad quick stat facts of the organizations or things that you've been part of that you've created from that timeline? I guess when you started getting into this.
Yeah, so I would say there's two kind of styles. I would say of things I like to create. One is creation through repetition. And one is creation through long-term planning and vision. So they're very different. So so I basically I organize a weekly sauna culture. Yes. That's very much community oriented.
The BC Mobile Sauna Society.
That's right, and that's been going since 2000, year 2000. So I know everyone's getting on the sauna train right now, being saunas, it's crazy, we're popping it up everywhere. I'm that's been 20 years for us. So we've been doing that. And it's cool because we're like, we already knew about it because we're being so hipster about it, which is really sad. But basically we're like...
/ saunas being in indigenous cultures from time.
Yeah, like pretty much all northern cultures, like you go to like China, Korea, Japan has sauna onsen culture. Northern Europeans have it. The fact that actually Canada, anyways, but I digress. So basically, the weekly, the repetition style. So every Sunday we've been sweating, except for the pandemic, for 20 years in someone's backyard, and it's in a sauna. And also Freestyle Focus Group was also every Monday for 9 years, 10 years.
Dang.
And that was every Monday. And these things are based on an idea of what success looks like in terms of how I see it, is like repetition is how, the repetition itself can be the creation process. And if you find a way to invite people to it without promoting it, like promotion is like, everyone come. Invitation is like, can you please come? And that person invites someone else. And then because it's every week. Yeah, it's like chain link. And so that's that style. And there's the other one, which is like everyone come, big tent. And that's like Mural Festival. Or that's like transformation projects where we would build like massive things we invite everyone to. And then build tons of funding and lots of engagement and build systems where everyone can work together. Much more challenging, but much more of like a job, like income. These other ones are more like over time it will repeat and change, but it will be constant, but it won't peak and valley. So like the big stuff is like, there's a thing, and then it's not happening. The repetition is like, it's happening.
And it's a practice.
And it's practicing, it's moving. You can come to it, and if you don't come, that's all good. See you next week. So both of those together, I think, create like a nice...
So are you still saunaing and freestyling?
Yeah, so sauna is still every week, which is great. We've been rebuilding it since the pandemic, and it's been a really interesting litmus test on society in general. Like how the sauna community has been rebuilding is also, I think, matching the geist of like how we're all trying to also rebuild our relationships, but it's hard, but it's been going well. And then freestyling has been a little bit less because freestyling takes an abundance of spirit. And frankly, there isn't an abundance of spirit, at least in the communities that I'm working in. There's like we're getting our shit back together. And like I feel like everyone in their own way is finding ways to create that abundance again. We're not quite there in my opinion. I think so much healing that needs to be done right now. And so freestyling is happening less right now. But it's not going away.
Yeah. And you can do that all the time by yourself.
Oh, it's happening at home.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's happening at home. But there isn't a weekly right now.
Yeah.
No.
Wow, when I was reading the bio that you sent me, the part that also got to me was learning more about what you studied in school.
Right.
And now that makes sense because I have legit an Adrian quote in my phone about swimming.
Oh, it's their surfing quote.
Surfing is the swimming of thinking.
Or was it, is it?
Surfing, no.
Oh, no, I know what it is.
No,
it's
listening
is the surfing of thinking. Yeah,
listening is the surfing of thinking. And you didn't even mention when we talked about that you had studied, you have a master's in philosophy, and then with a focus on gender.
Oh, do you need tea? More tea. You need more tea. Yeah, gender, queer theory, phenomenology.
This word, phenomenology. I was like, wait, what? What does that mean? I had to Google it.
What'd you learn? What is it?
Okay, well, I'm going to read.
I'd be interested to know what Google thinks it is.
Okay, I'm going to tell you what shows up when you just Googs. Phenomenology.
Oh, you get a picture of Merleau-Ponty? Yeah.
Yeah, is the philosophical study of objectivity and reality, more generally, as subjectively lived and experienced. It seeks to investigate the universal features of consciousness while avoiding assumptions about the external world.
That's right.
Aiming to describe phenomena as they appear to the subject and to explore the meaning and significance of the lived experience.
Lived experience. So exactly. So a lot of us.
Break it down.
So a lot of us will hear about, for instance, like a lot of these things have seeped into sort of social practice, social justice language, right? So we've all heard lived experience. Like, oh, that person has a different lived experience. Well, these things come from phenomenology, like in the 60s, right? From these French and German folks. And so phenomenology looks at the basis of what is from an experiential point of view.
Right.
Not like what are the laws of nature?
Right.
Like lots of philosophies top down. What's the like Aristotelian stuff is like, here's the categories and taxonomy of everything. How do you fit into it? Oh, you don't fit into it? Then you don't matter as much because you have less reality. Your existence doesn't fit the system, so you're excluded, right? So like that's, I mean, we all know where that leads.
Yeah.
Not a good place, right?
Yeah.
Whereas phenomenology like flips that script and is like, how is one experiencing the world, and how can we know about the world and what is from experience as the foundational level, and then if there's experience that we cannot reflect on, if we can't access that, but there is stuff happening, what does that mean? So basically, like, is there information from things you cannot reflect on or know beyond or pre-experience? So like embodied, so things that are non-cognitive, like embodied experience. So like, when you feel something, like people talk about vibe, right?
Yeah.
It's like when you talk about, what are you talking about? And everyone's like, oh, that's some hippie, whatever.
Yeah.
It's actually not. It's pre-reflective experience. So I'm feeling things, but I can't describe in words or reflection what it is, but that's information. So Western thinking before pre-60s would be like, disqualify that as important. But of course, like, we all have felt an energy in a space and we're like, that was an unsafe space. Like, we'll talk about that, but people's like, well, why was it unsafe? Why was it unsafe? And they'll like kind of question you. And it's like, well, before being able to reflect on it, I already felt that information. But of course there is a block, because how do you describe it? So that's what they're looking at here, is they're looking at what is that information, because it's going to let us know what reality is. And then you can have all sorts of discussions about it. So,
cool.
Yeah, and so Frantz Fanon is the guy to check out, because he was this is good tea, I know, he gets excited.
Just miss my mouth.
That's the kind of tea party we're having.
Yeah, that's what's going on.
So basically that all led to me being like, okay, Frantz Fanon, he had this work where, so he was a black man who grew up in a French colony. So he basically he used phenomenology to talk about racism and to talk about how race impacted public space and how it affected that pre-reflective space. And he writes about it, and it's absolutely the most brilliant stuff I've ever read. And it informed a lot of like what I think about in terms of event design and creating space and using art and culture to access that pre-reflective space.
Yeah, can you expand on that more? Because that was literally my next question. Is like, how did studying all of that, getting a nice piece of paper with your name on it, saying you studied the thing, like how does that actually inform how you live and work, especially within community and all these diverse communities that you're in?
Well, I'm not at university anymore. So I stopped going in 2008, and I finished my degree, and I was like, I'm never doing this anymore because the output is papers. And working in an institution that has its place, but not for me. Because I had a lot of challenges around writing. When it comes to writing, I have a lot of I had like an extreme amount of challenges writing my thesis, and I was like, oh, like I'm not supposed to be writing about it, but I am really fascinated by it and interested. So I realized I wanted to make it happen in public space, and I thought I was going to be an architect. So I actually applied and then dropped out of UBC architecture after 3 months. I dropped out. I was like, because I wanted to create something for my communities I was part of and serving. And I thought a practical skill would be good. So it was a brutal experience of dropping out of something that you go into. But we've all been there. And then I was like, okay, no, like it needs to be in arts and culture, because arts and culture is where I kept throwing parties, basically. Like the whole time I was doing my master's degree, I was throwing raves. One was called Hard. It was called Real Hard was one of the parties. It was so embarrassing, thank you. And it was in London, Ontario when I was doing and it was like me and Ginji. Hey Ginji, what's up? And
shout out.
Oh my God. And it was like a good party. It was a good spot. But basically I kept finding myself throwing parties constantly, even though I was busy. And I'm like, well, apparently events and getting people together is what I'm made for. And then I was like, well, how do I be an architect? And that's like, oh, like placemaking, public art installations, and getting people together. And then the idea was like, well, how do you break down all this like lived, like oppressive behavior that happens before cognition? It's like, well, we do that by creating prototypes of how people can be together and feel good and then like that can replicate, because you'll replicate learned behavior, right? So like I think of events as prototypes for the city we want to live in, right? So like when we celebrate together, everyone's having a different experience, and that's good, and that's going to happen because we all have different like narrative that we bring.
Yes.
Like we're embodied differently, we have different privilege, we have different background, different story, but if we all model and prototype this city we want to live in, which is arts and culture gives you the scripts, then you get to be together and you get to make a festival, and it has safety and it has music and it has washrooms and it has hydration and it has drinks and food, like a city should.
Yeah.
And you can move around freely and participate without barriers. That's the city we want to live in. And so if we keep prototyping it, eventually people are like, why don't we live in a city that actually feels like this festival, right? And that's what we're doing. And so eventually we're kind of like reprogramming expectations of what it can be to live in a city, you know. And so so every time you do that festival, as you improve it, you create more and more people that demand more from their city and expect more, and like know what it feels like to feel good in public space, because a lot of people never have. They're always like, oh, I always feel awkward when I leave my house because it feels so like that's actually kind of what we can do with these things. Yeah.
Yo, wow.
Oh, I have a bit I can choose. I can't choose.
There you go.
So that's kind of the plan.
That's really interesting to hear. Like, I don't think I've ever just heard that side of your mind, or where it comes from, and what you've immersed yourself in, which is really cool. And like, you know, seeing now the entity of, well, I guess, you know, most people know you from Vancouver Mural Festival, and you being the director of engagement and doing exactly this, like building teams and connecting and seeing who are the superheroes in each space and bringing them together to do what they do best. Like, now the festival's going on to what, 7 years, 8 years?
I guess it'll be the 8th year, I guess. 2016, 17, 18, 19.
How does it feel now to see what it's grown into, and especially the impact that it's had on the city based on like this original intention?
Pretty wild. I don't know. We didn't know where it was going. We had no idea. Do you mean like, what does it feel like in terms of where it could go in the future, or do you mean like?
No, like now in reflection. Like that's a big chapter of life, man. And
yeah,
like,
no, 8 years is a long
and
time.
it's evolved a lot in different ways, but more so like you coming from, you know, where you've come from, of throwing parties, and then putting that energy and effort with a non-for-profit that is now what it is.
Yeah, you know, mixed feelings.
Yeah.
You know, like
it's
it's not all good. You know, but there's a lot of challenges, of course. I feel very lucky that I met the people at the certain time that I did, and like, man, like, with all the people that worked on it, like over the years, like hundreds of people. So I feel mostly grateful, and also like doing a festival and a collaborative project through the last like couple of years, with like how collaboration became so challenging during the pandemic, and then also how we've had to sort of I've been shown that the work is constant. It's like to be vigilant about the work, and you have to also, I find that I'm learning that you have to be constantly changing how the work is done, and that's always challenging because you build systems and you try to get better and improve, and then you realize, oh, we were doing some of the work in a way that was not getting the benefits that I thought they were given, and then on the other side of things, like, oh, some of the stuff that we've been working on has been giving incredibly good benefits, but in places we didn't expect. So I think at this point, like over 400 murals, like, I don't know how many events. I think over 20 something festivals.
My gosh.
Because like the winter and summer plus Strathcona Party plus other ones.
Plus events that are fundraisers and things that happen.
I think it's like close to 40 or something things. I feel mostly good about it, I guess, positive, but I'm also like, what's the next thing? And I think like the next thing is like building the next like layer of humans, like the next leadership cohort that can like take Mural Fest into the next phase. That's what's exciting, is like doing that work right now. So I'm really excited about that. Yeah,
that's gonna be an interesting new chapter. With the festival and seeing how it's grown to such a capacity of, like employing and having had so many different artists come through, seeing like the artwork that's been put up around the city. Like so many, and especially Coast Salish art, like seeing more of that presence. That's what's been around.
One of the best parts.
Definitely, you know, and then obviously using the festival itself as a platform to amplify and showcase, especially those like cultural performers, dancers, musicians, groups, communities from the underground, and that make up like, you know, the landscape, and putting them all on one stage. To me, that has been such a beautiful thing to witness and also be a part of. And of course, also when it comes to creating something that's bigger than yourself now, right? Like it never was about you.
No, I just work here now.
Yeah, it really becomes its own thing. And like anyone who's doing something in the public is going to get critiqued. It's going to face people with different opinions, especially like putting on an opinion of like, what something should be, you know? Everyone has an opinion on things. Like, how have you been able to, I guess, move forward and stick true with your intention and goal of what you're doing?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah. You know, I think the first couple of years was like so hard. Oh my God. Like we were so taking big risks, I guess, and going all in and highly identifying with the work as ours and us, like as people. Oh, I just hit the mic. That's going to sound great. Yeah. So like we're like, it's like my story was I'm doing this. Andrea was like she's doing this. Dave was like he's doing this. Drew's doing this. Gabe is doing this. Like all the like original founding crew, we're all like we're doing this. And when people critique the work, we're like you're critiquing us. Right.
There's a personal
how could you say all these negative things or positive things, whatever? But how can you say all these things? You don't know like how hard we've been working. That whole how hard we've been working energy. And I think that like, you know, I totally forgive myself for that. But also it's like it's a little bit silly to think that way, but you can't help it. Because when we work on these things, it's our hearts that we're putting into it. It's not like I'm engineering a bridge, you know, and we have a huge team, we're well-resourced. No, we're working in the basement. Yeah. So like the first up until 2020, we were working out of Andrea Curtis's basement, and there wasn't even a window. There was a coal chute thing that we could open where people would put the coal in the building back in the 1880s. And we'd open the coal chute and be like, hey, everybody, and we'd scare people on the sidewalk and then to get some air down there. Like that's the level. And like, we had some decent support for sure for the first couple of years from the city. But after that, we didn't get any support from the city. Only the first 3 years we had funding, and then none. And yet we did all these murals, and so by then we were at 150 murals. So people had this perception that we were like this like super like tight, established. With like the murals are established, the stories and the meaning are established for thousands of years. Like Coast Salish artwork, like it wasn't even artwork. It's like we call it artwork, but it's not artwork. It's like Coast Salish culture, Coast Salish laws, Coast Salish governance, Coast Salish like representation of ancestors and thousands of years of history, art. But like that stuff is established. But us as a team working together and knowing how to do the work, a couple of years old, working in a basement with our laptops, and then for 2 months of the year, we'd have like 100 people working with us, and then we're back to like, oh my God, now how do we take care of this? So I think like at first we were very much like, hey guys, we're trying to make something, go easy on us, but also your critiques are all super valid. Yeah. So like the first year we curated it, but of course we curated it because we couldn't ask someone to curate for it because we weren't a thing yet. Yeah. So we were like, well, why did Drew Young curate all this? It's because Drew was down to curate it, and we knew him, and he's amazing, and he's working in Snag for 4 years every Tuesday doing live art at the Cobalt, building community, which is one of the sickest events of all time. And so we thought that Drew was perfect, and he was. And so what was really interesting is your tutor was like, well, why aren't there all these other curators from other communities? We're like, well, yes, we would like that, but we had to take the criticism first, and then we built our guest curator program. And so ever since then, we've had a guest curator program. We've had 7 or 8 curators over the last 7 or 8 years. So it was that great moment of like, thank you for the free feedback. We're so excited to incorporate that. But at first we were just like kind of being a little bit like, we're being brats, being like, oh, like you don't know how hard we worked. But it's like, no, like the fact that you have this opportunity, you need to actually represent. And that's what we're being told. And we're like, fair. And then that happened every year. It has happened every year.
It's happened every year.
And you know what?
Yeah.
Now, after year 3, we're like, we would prepare staff. Be like, get ready. You're working super hard, putting all your energy in, and you'll be critiqued. And that's totally natural. And it's not going to feel great, but we're here to support each other. And it's gonna be painful, and either you learn from it or not. So that's been the whole thing.
And also that's life.
That's life,
That's
especially with
of
public
life.
art.
Yeah.
Like if you're doing gallery art, great. The people who came to the thing and maybe it's the media that reviewed it, be a bit of thing. But if your work is up 24 hours, 365, and you're on a building, you're taking territory, and you're in their neighborhoods, it's like it's a much bigger conversation, and that's totally fair. And you know what? That's what art's for. In the best case, respectful, passionate, even anger, even sadness. Like let's create that space for that as best we can, and have those conversations. And you know, that's good. But it's not easy, but it's good. Yeah.
I like that. That's a very honest and real answer. And also, like, you're very open. Like, when I think about you, I think about how your eyeballs are, which is always just, like, open and just curious.
Totally.
Open and curious, and, like, down to be, like hit me with it. Hit me with the truth, you
Yeah,
know?
I love feedback. That's great.
So I read an article a while ago, actually, but it's also been in conversations amongst the community, you know, with VMF, with murals going up, with the relationship with different developers who also will pay for some of these murals, et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, within the arts and cultural community and the erasure of arts and cultural spaces, especially accessible spaces for BIPOC and marginalized folks, it's like we blame, these guys are seen like the devil to us, and the housing crisis, la la la, ray, 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 you know. But I'm curious to know from your side of things, you know, the critique of like whether or not VMF is, and what the work has been, is contributing to gentrification, contributing to the issues that we're facing. What is your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, first of all, like I really sympathize and understand. Like I live in East Vancouver. Like I've been here for 25 years now. So many spaces that I've been getting community to come together has turned into condos. Like I used to run like many different spaces in the city, and I also live here, and I'm prone to the same pressures. Most of the folks that started the festival are live in Mount Pleasant still, somehow that we still live here, and we're all renters, and we're all figuring that out. And we put the murals up in our own neighborhood, so that's number one. Is we see that impact, and we know that impact. And from that perspective, I always like to take the conversation and be like, okay, if we make it not VMF for a moment and just say public art, right? Because VMF is one of the most prolific, or is the most prolific probably public art creators or whatever, producers, right? And murals and street art also have an interesting history of like non-alignment, right? Murals being used to cover up and stop graffiti, because graffiti is the outlawed version. So even murals versus street art, and so there's also murals versus neighborhoods, and also street art versus neighborhoods. An idea of cleanliness, an idea of like for instance, like some folks would see some types of public art as like not helping gentrification, being like making it more affordable somehow. Like if you flip it, it gets kind of confusing. So it's like, basically it's like, okay, if we create improvements and we create some sort of beauty here, then it somehow accelerates gentrification. But then you have to flip it then. When that means, okay, then in order to create affordability, should we go and like trash our neighborhoods to make it so that we make it like less appealing so people don't want to buy here? It's like, well, then the people who live here, why are you trashing? Like, why are you reducing the perceived value of the neighborhood? So it's a sort of like if public art shows up in a neighborhood and it is made by the people who live there, which 90% roughly of our artists are local. Are they gentrifying their own neighborhood? Do they know what they're doing? Are they not aware of what they're doing? And the thing is like, it's complicated. Yeah. Because
it can't be blanketed over with a one statement.
Like even like, as you can see, I'm kind of moving between different theses here of like with the challenges, but ultimately if a neighborhood has a perceived value for speculation, which the whole city does, all of Vancouver does, we could either have murals made or not. If we don't make murals, will the city be gentrified? Probably. If we make murals, will the city be gentrified? Yes. If we find ways to take cash and investment and put that into the creation of artwork that is community created and has story and has meaning and employs artists and gets them paid really well, feel really good about that. If we're not open to criticism and we're not open to dialogue and are not like looking for the communities that are, consistently marginalized and silenced, and we're just doing a bunch of white guys doing murals of babes, which actually is a lot of muralism.
Really?
Oh yeah. Look at most muralism around the world. Yeah. A lot of it, and it's just like white dudes, like doing big, hyper photorealistic images of like hot people. It's a lot of it. A lot of muralism is that, and we had a rule starting on like you can't just like white dudes making hot chick murals. Yeah. Which basically was like a lot of it. And so like for us, we're sort of like, well, how about we just let the artists decide what they want to do in their neighborhoods and then get them funded. And in Vancouver, the cash is like a lot of it is coming from people who own land, because we do murals on the buildings. And who owns the buildings? Developers. And so most of the cash that we have had for the festival has been not from the usual places. So we're not taking cash from other people in the arts. So we're not like taking like funding that would go somewhere else and then we're getting it. It's actually net new income to the sector. So like basically you look at like our murals, after the city stopped funding us in 2018, these are the startup first couple of years, we had like, well, where do we get our revenue from to pay for all this work? A lot of festivals in the world, like it's volunteer, you get exposure bucks. It's like, oh, like you get a space to do your work. That's good exposure. We've never done that. Everyone gets paid very well for their work and gets trained. So if you want to do that, you have to find a way to fund it. And we've done that. So we feel good about that.
Thank you for illuminating us.
Kind of went on a bit long there, but
no,
that's classic
that's
me
okay.
though, by the way. So
well, that and
self-aware.
Like, I think a lot of people want to understand that in a more. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's like we really wanted to get artists paid really well, and we wanted to find out who would do it, and we had certain folks that we wouldn't work with, and certain organizations.
In terms of the developer world.
No, like we don't take like any money from the mining industry, for example.
Right.
So like because we're very environmental focused, like everything we do is very environmentally sustainable. So we're like, okay, mining is like a no-go, but because we literally work with buildings and building managers and tenants and business owners and building owners, we're like, well, who's going to fund this? Building owners, people who work with buildings. We felt like it was a natural fit. And I think that like the conversation is live about like what are developers, what's their role in our city? And ultimately we found that some are unwilling to talk about their practices and some are really interested in collaborating.
Yes.
Like the motel, right? Let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah.
So
illuminate the
there is
humans.
There is 100 artists in this old motel that was going to be demolished. But instead, David Dupre called up Nicola Wealth and was like, hey, I maintain art spaces. Please don't tear it down. Can you let me put artists in it? Then he called us up and he was like, hey, Nicola Wealth really wants to maybe do this, and they want you guys to jump in and partner as well. And then we painted the whole thing. Nicola Wealth,
top to bottom,
a developer, paid for it, did not ask for any recognition, paid for the artwork, the artist, very good artist fees, very good project, and then also let David Dupre do this crazy thing. And we all worked together to like work with the city to allow it to happen, because it's very hard to get liability and zoning and change of use and business license to line up with the thing that it wasn't for. All happened. City council, the last city council really helped. Mike Weeb, shout out, helped a lot. Everyone worked together behind the scenes to make it happen. And then once it happened, everyone's like, why aren't there more of these? It's like, because it's so challenging. But Nicola stepped up, they paid for the thing. And then now everyone pays rent to basically each year is the deal to cover the whole rental of the lease agreement. So it's a beautiful system. And guess what? Without us talking and working with that developer, never would have happened. Without David Dufresne being willing to work with that developer, never would have happened. Because artists don't want to administer their they don't want to spend time in emails and contracts and all that stuff. They want to do their work.
Exactly, make your art.
And that's VMF's role. It's we will do all the meetings and the Zoom calls and the contracts and the insurance and the training and the scheduling and the payroll, all that stuff. So the artist can just be like, yo, I'm just going to do some amazing, mind-blowing art, and you're invited.
The bridge.
So that's it, right? So it's not easy. It's very much negotiation. Sometimes you don't negotiate a good deal, but the more you do it, the more of a chance you have of doing a good deal. Early on, we would undersell ourselves, and kind of be like, we really should have sold ourselves more to get a better value from the partnership. Now it's much better. We know the value of the work that's being done, and we understand what everyone needs. We can make a budget and get people paid properly. But yeah, it's that project. I'm like, whatever. That's so wild that happened.
Dude, I remember you having preliminary conversation. I was on one of those conversations where you're like, if you could have access to a space, what would you need it for? You were doing the pre-focus group.
Yeah.
And then that happened.
No, it was wild. Yeah, we did the residency program. Yeah. I'm
gonna flip topics for a minute, and I want to talk about Deb, because I think Deb is so cool. And just
my idol.
Deb's story about how she built the relationship with the festival. Can you tell us about that?
So Deborah Sparrow.
Yes,
yeah.
And also,
we say Deb, but it's Deborah Sparrow.
Yeah, Deborah Sparrow.
But it's cool. She would be okay with that, I think.
Yeah.
Deborah Sparrow. Where to begin? Well, 2017.
Yeah.
She emailed us, and it was one sentence, and it said, "Where's the Musqueam?" ? And I was like, oh, damn. So it's funny, in 2016, when we started it, I did, it was right from the beginning, we wanted to work in community and work with the Three Nations. But of course, when you haven't done anything yet, why does anyone want to work with you? Because you didn't have, oh no, I might have all liquids. Oh wait, here, this can work. This is tea. It'll be a bit weak though, but it'll be fine. And so it was great because I saw the email and I got a cold sweat, because I was like we did reach out, but we didn't get anywhere with that because we didn't know what we're doing.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, this is the moment. And I'm like, can we have a phone call?
Yeah.
Absolutely, let's chat. And then it was 3-hour phone call, classic. Those deep, just where are we at? She's asking me what is our values, what is our plan, what are we doing?
Because at that point in time, it was what, 1 year into the festival?
1 year in the festival, we had done 40 murals in the first year. Okay. So right away out the gate. Because the deal was, with the funding that we got, they're like, you must do, I don't know where this number came from, and it was not cool. Yeah. But it must be 40 murals.
It's a lot.
It's so much. Yeah. And so we did that, and all of a sudden, a lot of people were like, what are you guys, what's going on? And so Deborah emailed, it was great. And so ever since then, 2017 to now 2024, we do a project with we became Blanketing the City every year. We've done something, sometimes twice a year. We've just been working together super closely. At this point, it's there is no VMF without Deborah, really. And the first couple of years, it was just us working with Deborah, artist-led style, and then that turned into Deborah and us then working and bringing it out to the Three Nations. So it would be Janice and Anne. So Chief Janice George and Ange George, we had to the Three Nations. And then we have plans to do even more wild stuff in the future. But basically, every year, Cathedral Square, the Biltmore, the piece that's out here, and now all the digital and all the augmented reality, and then lighting up BC Place and Telus Garden and Canada Place. And so now we're doing light on the buildings, murals, and augmented reality digital. So all these layers. And she told me, I'm not going to stop until the whole city is blanketed, till I blanket the city. And I was like, can that be the name of it? And we're like, yeah, that's the name. So blanket, that was one of the first conversations, I want to blanket the city.
Wow.
And because she always talks about how she says, who is Vancouver? Right? She asks that question constantly. Who is Vancouver? Who are we? Who is, where are we? Who, and then she always wants to, she has the words of inviting people in to where they are. right? It's an invitation. Like the artwork is an invitation to think about and to reflect and to know. Because she's traveled, she's like been around the world and seen other places where you arrive and you're like kind of know where you are. You're like, I'm here. Whereas even like maybe 15 years ago, she wouldn't see Musqueam anywhere, or she wouldn't see Tsleil-Waututh, she wouldn't see Squamish information out in the public space. But that's changed a lot.
That's changed a lot. It's so sick because when you said that and what she said, I literally just thought about every time I step off of YVR Airport, Vancouver Airport, and you see her giant weavings.
Yes.
Just when you're entering customs.
Yes.
And then you're greeted by the two totems.
It's wild. Yeah, like hers and Susan Point's piece and like all of that. Yeah, the YVR, the shout out to YVR, like curation crew there, like
it's evolved more and more.
Yeah, and it's because of people like Deborah, Susan Point, all these people that have been like pushing for that, and there's a really cool evolution there. And
what have you learned about what it means to build right relations with the host nations here?
Well, so I would say that we've built good relations with artists because we're an arts festival. Our lane is basically working with artists. In terms of the nations, we have also worked with them as well. It's more complicated because we just really don't. What's a good to put it? We like to work with artists because the artists then do the right relations with the nation. And then we will work with, for instance, like we'll work with Musqueam Nation on working with them on procurement. For instance, like we'll have an artist call for maybe BC Hydro, for example. We did last year. And so we'll say, okay, BC Hydro wants to have good relations with the nation. So we'll work with the nation to like build the call together and then put it out to Musqueam. They'll put the call out to Musqueam, and then the call will come back, and then they'll be the jury, and then the artist will come out of that, and then we'll sit there in the middle and we'll put all the pieces together and then execute on the work. So that's like how we like to work with the three nations is like how they want to work with us, because we don't want to show up constantly with demands. We're going to be like, where do you want us to show up in the process? And then in terms of like relationships, we like to work with artists from the nations, and then they'll tell us like kind of how they want to work with their own group. Because like any community, everyone has different relationships with their own governance, right? So we love to take the lead from the artists, or we take the lead from the client, and then, or we take the lead from the nation. So whoever is showing up with what relation, so that's kind of the style, is like those pieces, yeah.
On a personal level, what do you feel like you've learned?
Oh, wow. What have I learned personally? About what?
About that, about connecting more with, artists from the host nations and what it means to be a freaking settler on these stolen lands,
Straight up. What have I learned? Well, I've learned how like disconnected I am from my own culture and my own ancestors. Like that's something that shows up a lot because like, I'm like Northern Scottish on my dad's side and Mennonite on my mom's side. I don't speak the languages. I don't know the customs. They don't know a lot of them. And I think not knowing, having that not knowingness is dangerous because I'm looking for that information locally here where I live, and yet I need to know where the boundary is of like, I'm supporting and I'm in service of the work that I'm working on, but it's also important to know where the work of VMF or myself or whatever is in service of that, but it isn't that. So for example, it's like, I need to connect with my own information and find out how that's working, so I'm not like crossing any boundaries, if that makes sense. So like I think because like my grandma came here as a refugee, as an immigrant, as a refugee from war, came here, tried to start a family, blah blah blah, and she told my mom, she didn't teach my mom German, right? And then now I'm English and I live in Canada and I'm not connected to my roots, and I think like a lot of the work that I'm trying to do is I'm basically like learning like what that needs to happen here, and I can, at least if I can't connect to that, at least I can help the folks that are here around me do the best I can to help with that here in terms of the three nations here. So that's kind of how I look at it.
I relate to that. I feel like the more I started to learn about what has taken place on these lands, did I also start to like connect more deeper with my own ancestry and where I was born and the things that have taken place there.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I actually have, I kind of misspoke earlier, but like I've started to look into that a lot more and identify a lot more with those pieces. Yeah.
Anything illuminating or interesting that you learned? Or that you feel like, you know, when you learn a thing and you're like, oh, I connect with that.
Yeah, a lot of that, yeah. Well, especially my Mennonite side.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, totally. We're fast walkers.
Yo, and Mennonite and the food that they produce.
It's a lot of farmer sausage.
Yeah, but like good qual.
Yeah, so like if you have no budget, eat like a Mennonite. Because it's like everything in Mennonite culture is like, it's like you can make some stuff that doesn't taste good and make it taste kind of good.
Maybe we're thinking of two different kinds. I feel like I've been to a cafe that it was like all the breads were made homemade.
Oh yeah, like, no, it's good. But bread's just like flour, right? Yeah. Like flour's not very nutritious.
Yeah.
It's like bad for you basically. But Mennonites were like, this is the best. There's some plots, you know. So like, or like, so Mennonites have this thing called faspa, and faspa is like, it's this an extra meal that they just made up. It's at 4:30ish.
Oh.
And it's like, and then you eat these like really bad for you foods that taste really good.
Okay.
That's the entire cuisine.
Oh no.
So it's like farmer sausage, like bad for you, tastes good.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like plots is like, it's like sugar fruit on these like squares.
Okay.
You know, yeah, because like basically Mennonites, they're landless. They're landless sustenance farmers.
Okay.
Who like every 70 or 80 years get kicked off their land and then they have to go to a new place for the last 200 years.
Okay.
So yeah, so like most of the prairies is like Mennonites in Canada because they were kicked out of the Ukrainian and Russian areas because the folks there were like, you guys got to get out of here because these guys got a sweet deal from the Tsar to farm the Ukraine. And they came here and they displaced, again, indigenous people here in the prairies. And that's why I'm here, because my ancestors displaced people in the prairies and took their land because they were pushed off of this land because they took land from the indigenous Slavs that were there. So because they came from Prussia. So they basically went from Prussia, speaking German, then that flipped over and like, get out of here because you guys are Mennonites, you're not Aryan.
Yeah.
Then they got a deal to, now they're in Russia and Ukraine.
Yeah.
And then the locals are there like, no, we're kicking you out because you guys are doing farming here on our land. Canada, and now they're in Canada. And then so far, we'll see, but that's the Mennonite vibe. As we're just constantly farming and getting kicked out for 200 years.
I never knew any of that.
Yeah, it's pretty stressful being a Mennonite. Because you're always in the wrong place.
Oh my God.
You're like, oh, here we are again, displacing people. So basically, like my ancestry is very problematic, and as much as it's funny, it's also not funny. And Scottish people are the same. Like the most colonizing people in Canada are Scottish people. John A. Macdonald.
Oh,
Look at the name, Sinclair Center. That's my last name. Like I basically have the worst ancestors. So, anyways, this is all going to be on video, so this is great.
That will be.
But anyway, it's an awareness
an awareness and a lifelong journey of figuring out healing.
Well, I have a lot of healing to do, but ultimately, like the communities that I work with, like I'm very, very aware of how my ancestors have acted, and it's absolutely brutal. And I have like a lot of energy around doing what I can to do whatever I can to make those things heal for people. Yeah, it's real. It's super real. And like, I'm laughing only because it's uncomfortable, not because it's funny. So everyone knows that. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, it's not easy to just say it how it is, for real, and own up to it or not shy from it, but also like, that's like the ancestors, you know?
Yeah.
And that is where we've come from. I also have Spanish colonizer blood in me. Like, Filipinos were made up of exactly that. Spaniards coming to colonize the Bahasa-speaking peoples, the Malay peoples, of all those islands. So yeah, it's a lifelong journey to like question, learn, sit with the uncomfortable, and then where I've been sitting at, especially as a curator, it's like, how does that, whatever I'm learning next and now, like how is that going to inform what I do from this point forward? How does that push and deepen? Like I think, I'm just thinking about this now. It's like, I think my word this year is deepen, actually. You know, it's been coming up in conversations and interviews we've been having lately of like, you know, the intention or the word that you're carrying through. Because like, I don't really mess with I think it's called the Gregorian calendar. Like, I'm so into the Lunar New Year energetics and also, like, the astrological energetics. So I'm feeling that into that for the coming year.
That makes sense, yeah. The Gregorian thing's whack. Like, leap year? Get into it. Like, it's not, you didn't count right?
Yeah.
Come on.
Well, where do you feel like you want to go forward next? Like, where does your energy feel pulled into? Or as simple as
I'm so tired right now. I was like, that was just really fun. But now I'm like also tired.
You're exhausted. It could be one word.
Oh yeah, is this the one word checkout?
We're just doing a one word
Brevity
checkout.
is not my strong suit, clearly.
Yeah.
I don't know if I stopped talking for an hour there.
No. I mean, I slid in there a few different times.
Okay, good, because like, man, I don't even know what even happened. I feel like I just like took truth serum.
I'm so sorry.
You should call this thing truth serum. Have you guys seen like Mr. Smith and Mr. Jane? Like you showed me.
Yeah, we watched it.
You told me. Yeah, of course you've seen it. You told me. So like the part where he takes the truth serum, like, and he starts like saying everything in front of the art auction. That was my favorite. Gave him too much of the drugs.
Yeah.
What's my thing? I don't know. I think I'm just like grateful and humble and just trying to do the best I can with like the like what opportunities I've been given and yeah, like creativity and like listening and just like finding the spirit. Where does the spirit lead? You know, like where am I being led and where are we being led to make a much cooler, better, more just place we all can live together in, you know? And I think arts and culture are the answer. So
I think that's why we both found ourselves in it and why we do what we do. It's like that high of seeing all the pieces come together and seeing the intention manifest and unfold. And you can't predict how that's gonna look. And sometimes you wonder if you're even gonna arrive there. You do, and then you're like, this is why we do what we do.
Yep.
Yeah, I really appreciate you, Adrian, and
this has been fun.
Spending time and like
great.
Especially after a full work day, and also allowing me to ask you some really big questions.
Totally. Yeah.
You know, I appreciate the vulnerability and the trust that has been built throughout time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're someone who I will continue to learn from, and someone I also want to continue to support in, you know, all the things that you will end up doing that brings people together in the name of art and culture and dance.
And more.
And more! So good. Okay, we're going to end this thing. Shout outs to everybody who has been tuning in, who's been watching, who's watching the replay. This has been a Jazzy production. My name is Kazi. I'm sitting here with my good friend Adrian Sinclair, and we out here on the unceded, ancestral, and beautiful lands of the Musqueam, the Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish First Nations, who've been here since time immemorial, stewarding and protecting and advocating for this land that we all, like, I was just reflecting on this today, like, I feel very lucky to feel safe here, you know, right here and right now, and have to acknowledge that that comes off of the backs of other people. So
big time.
Let's keep learning, let's keep loving, let's keep listening, and that's it. Thank you for watching Vancity. Beats,
peace,
eats,
and
more.